Before the first blockbuster Jaws would terrify audiences, before Star Wars would change the world, before Harrison Ford would become the king of cool in Indiana Jones, there was another film. A film that would set the stage for the blockbuster era of the 1970s. A film that would start the careers of Richard Dreyfuss, the adult career of Ron Howard, Harrison Ford, Mackenzie Phillips, and Suzanne Somers. One of the best coming-of-age films of all time. The film General salutes George Lucas's underrated masterpiece, American Graffiti.
10, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, rock, we're gonna rock around the clock tonight.
To fully salute American Graffiti, we need to understand the early years of George Lucas. The man who would change the face of movies forever grew up in a dusty California town of Modesto. George's first love was not spaceships or aliens. He didn't even love movies. George Lucas had another love, and that love was cars, and fast cars. After a car accident that nearly claimed his life, and 4 years of film school, and a feature debut with the experimental THX 1138, George's friend and mentor Francis Ford Coppola encouraged George to make a film that would be accessible to audiences, and was personal to George. George had an idea to make a film about his early cruising days in Modesto.
I guess the anthropologist side of me never went away, and I was very interested in the fact that in the 70s, when I was working in the film industry, obviously we've been through the 60s, and the whole innocence of the 50s, the mating rituals of the 50s, the uniquely American mating rituals of meeting the opposite sex in cars, was very fascinating to me. I really liked this kind of lost ritual that had gone on in the United States between 1940 and basically the beginning of the 60s.
American Graffiti shows George at the peak of his directing prowess, and proves that George is indeed a great director, not just a billionaire, creator of Star Wars and merchandising juggernaut. And he deserves the auteur status that guys like Scorsese and Spielberg get. And if you disagree with me,
I don't want you here.
and also to add, George Lucas deserves respect, and I'm sick of Disney and all these people disrespecting him, and all these fans, and people like this.
George Lucas raped our childhood. George Lucas raped our childhood.
Get a life, you nerds. The prequels aren't that bad. Sorry, back to the review. American Graffiti follows a group of friends on their last night of summer. The film takes place in 1962, which was a transitional time in America. The innocent rock and roll era of the 50s was fading away, and the Vietnam War and the hippie flower power era was on the horizon. The 1950s era is personified by the hot rod riding John Milner, the king of Modesto and the fastest car in the valley. He's a man lost in a dying era, constantly saying how he wants things to stay the same.
I ain't going off some goddamn fancy college. I'm staying right here, having fun as usual.
And reminiscing on the old days.
The whole strip is shrinking. I remember about 5 years ago, it'd take you a couple hours, tank full of gas just to make one circuit. It's really something.
Milner is challenged to a race by a young Harrison Ford, who was actually working as a carpenter at the time. How could you not know this man was going to be a star?
You will see a stranger. You will see a stranger.
This is the type of guy who would beat up the Fonz and take his girl. Sorry, Henry Winkler. He spends the night cruising looking for a score when he picks up the young Carol Morrison, who is a child of the 60s generation. She, like Terry the Toad, will miss out on the fun and innocence of the 50s, in contrast to Milner. Their generational contrast is shown in this scene.
Why'd you do that?
I don't like that surfing shit. Rock and roll's been going downhill ever since Buddy Holly died.
Don't you think the Beach Boys are boss?
Personally, I like the Mamas and the Papas. After a night filled with antics and more reminiscing.
See that over there, that 41? That used to be, believe it or not, the fastest car in the valley. I never got a chance to race Earl, though. He got his 1955 in about the hairiest crash we ever had.
Notice how this scene is darkly lit and shows the decaying cars in the background, foreshadowing the slow death of a whole way of life. When the two part ways, Carol says the line,
Couldn't I have something to remember you by?
He gives her a piece of his car, giving her something from one generation to another. We should always take something from the past into the future. It should never be forgotten. But sometimes we have to move on to a new era. John finally realizes this after he wins the race with Harrison Ford on a technicality, when Ford's tire blows and he flies off the road. John finally admits the times are changing, and he is no longer king, and his time is at an end.
Huh? I was losing, Dan. What? He had me, man. He was pulling away from me just before he crashed.
The next storyline I want to talk about is the Kurt and Steve storyline. Before going to college out east, they want to spend one last night just remembering the old days.
We are going to remember all of the good times.
First going to the old school dance, and then going off on their own separate adventures. Steve is all about leaving town and going out east.
We're finally getting out of this turkey town, and now you want to crawl back into your cell, right?
Wanting to date other girls other than his high school sweetheart, who represents the past for him.
That seeing other people while I'm away can't possibly hurt.
I know. Hey, your college girl's really put out.
You said it, not me. Where Kurt is more apprehensive.
I don't think I'm going to be going tomorrow.
Kurt spends the night tracking down a beautiful blonde in a white T-bird. Steve, after having a fight with his girlfriend,
You're disgusting! Get out of my car!
and finds out that she is the one he wants. And staying home is his destiny.
Why should I leave home to find a home? You know, why should I leave friends that I love to find new friends?
Which is true in life. Sometimes what you want is right in front of you all along. And sometimes you have to go out in the world and find your destiny. Kurt has an adventure-filled night, running in with a gang. After one last-ditch effort to find the blonde in the T-bird, he puts in a radio dedication to a mysterious disc jockey, who tells him,
"Get your ass in gear. There's a great big beautiful world out there."
And he turns out to be the legendary Wolfman Jack himself. An overjoyed Kurt gets a response from the blonde in the T-bird, but she still can't say how she knows him or who she is.
It's not important.
It's important! It's important to me! You're the most beautiful, exciting thing I've ever seen in my life, and I don't know anything about it.
And if he wants to find out, he's going to have to keep chasing her.
Could we meet someplace?
I cruise 3rd Street. Maybe I'll see you tonight.
Now, this is a theory I've had for years. I believe the blonde in the T-bird doesn't really exist. She's just Kurt's fantasy. He even says.
I just saw a vision.
And come on, good-looking women just don't mouth "I love you" out the window. And everybody has a different story on who she is.
Come on!
You know Mr. Beeman? He owns Hepcap Jewelers.
Yeah.
That's his wife.
Any of you guys know a blonde and a white T-bird?
I know. What about her?
I'm trying to find out, who she is.
Well, she's out of your price range, man. My brother went out with her, include me in.
Price range? Are you trying to tell me that she's a prostitute?
That's right. She's a $30 sherry. Jesus, can you imagine that? $30 for that broad.
We gotta be thinking about two different broads. Hey, watch it.
I believe she's a representation of what he's leaving behind. And the end of an era. After taking the Wolfman's advice, he leaves for college. And in my opinion, this is the best shot in the movie. As his plane is leaving, he gets one last glimpse of the blonde and the T-bird in the world he's leaving behind. To this day, this shot still gives me goosebumps. And like a gut punch, we find out the fates of these four friends, which is so true to real life. We see people we knew in high school and say, "He died? That one went to war?" But sure, we all grow up, but we all wish we could go back to that hot summer's night when life was simpler, cruising with the friends we loved. And like the blonde and the T-bird, it's so close in our minds, but yet so far away. In 4 short years, George would make another film about a boy leaving home for his destiny.